This 12-minute presentation will focus on the important role that environmental education must play to enable the people of Africa to effectively combat climate change. Climate change is a major threat to African countries. Poor communities in particular are vulnerable to its impacts. South Africa has agreed to work with 192 countries from the international community to lower our own greenhouse gas emissions by committing to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, also known as the Paris Agreement. In this regard, and on a practical level, we are participating with the international community to achieve the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030, in particular Goal number 1, which is no poverty. For this reason South Africa submits to the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, by regularly presenting our intended nationally determined contribution. This includes our plans to adapt to adverse climatic conditions, our plans to limit our contributions towards global warming. Action plans in this regard are presented, and an explanation of how this will benefit the poor and marginalized in society. Raising the standard of living of the poor, however, presents a challenge, as the economic development required to do this requires energy, resulting in the release of even more greenhouse gases with climatic consequences. It calls for a careful balancing act. South Africa and the continent cannot afford to develop at the expense of its free services of nature, such as clean water, healthy air, and fertile soil. At the heart of the climate problem lies the neglect of our common resources. Unless we learn to avoid the negative trend of overexploitation and pollution, the future of our children looks bleak. Although the solution lies in a collective global effort with international partners, Africa faces the looming prospect of a 4 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, and therefore can no longer afford to be passive about it. Action needs to be taken now. If ever we are to overcome the global warming crisis, we will have to do so in a sustainable way, respecting nature, by working in harmony with nature instead of exploiting it. By allowing natural water, air, and soil cycles to continue to remain in a healthy state, we are looking after our own health, and the survival of future generations. But climate change leads to unpredictable weather patterns such as floods and droughts, as cycles no longer follow predictable patterns. This can disrupt farming practices, as too much rain could be just as disruptive as too little rain. In response, age-old agricultural practices will need to be adjusted to adapt to either drier or wetter conditions. Even habitats change, as ecosystems are no longer able to support life as it used to. This puts pressure on animals and vegetation. The habitats of many forms of life diminish. As a result, birds, for example, need to adjust to new migratory patterns. Even the seasonal mating behavior of animals and the germination of seeds are changing. Everything changes and leads to huge-scale disruptions in the functioning of nature with detrimental impacts on vegetation, animals and humans. The pace of climate change is hugely accelerated by human behavior. Some examples of human, or anthropogenic, activities that impact negatively on the ecosystem and promotes climate change are deforestation in favor of monocultures. This leads to soil erosion and limited diversity of life forms, which in return causes a reduced resistance to any external pressure. Also, the destruction of wetlands under the pretense of improving agricultural value is causing huge setbacks for natural system functioning as well as groundwater replenishment. Our continued dependence on fossil fuel for transportation and electricity is directly having an impact on climate change. In the end, all these well-intended developmental actions that has improvement in mind, will soon make life for the majority of our people unbearable. However, once we all realize the urgent need for development to come in line with the cleansing cycles of nature, we stand a chance to reverse this downward spiral. When nature is kept in a healthy state, it will provide the essential services such as healthy air, clean water, and fertile soil. All the things we need for a good quality of life. For a truly sustainable society to rise as it were from the ashes, we will need to revolutionize our common mindset. In order to maintain action into the future, all contributing sectors and individuals need to understand the value of becoming sustainable. Our children will suffer the most. The sooner they come in touch with, and appreciate nature, the better. Our young people need to know the value of clean, healthy natural resources and look after it with care. Our adults need to be concerned about the preservation of the remaining natural landscapes that still exist, to hand over a viable livelihood to their children. Those in the industrial sector need to be mindful, to utilize resources in a sustainable way, mindful that short-term gain often spells long-term disaster. The only true, and enduring change, will come about as we collectively stand together, to secure a better and hopeful future for all, the children of Africa. Much of the groundwork to move the understanding and respect of the young generation towards nature, can be done through education. In line with the Sustainable Development Goals, and as part of South Africa's intended nationally determined commitments, a massive educational drive is planned for the period 2015, leading to 2025. We need to use this opportunity to establish a sustainable mindset that understands and respects nature, in the young hearts of our country. In fact, we all need to understand that enduring sustainability can only happen once we respect the limitations of ecosystem processes. The energy sector will need to play a major role in changing from fossil-based electricity supply to renewables like solar power and wind power, of which we have in abundance. The forestry sector should ensure that much of our land is reforested to absorb greenhouse gases. The agricultural sector can play a major part in lowering the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, once it lowers its meat production in favor of grain and vegetable production. This will also have a positive impact on food security. In growing our food, there is also much room for improvement. We must adapt to a climate-smart approach. For example, effective irrigation, permaculture and the use of better adapted crop species. The general public needs to be educated and enabled, in terms of sustainable behavior to effectively combat global warming. In conclusion, what would the benefits of a truly sustainable society be? By retaining our ecosystems, we maintain our status as a responsible tourism destination. We can draw from a healthy and sustainable agricultural sector. We nurture a healthy population. People are taught how to take care of, and preserve their natural resources. And a society with access to clean renewable energy will rise up. We propose a simple structured learning drive to be rolled out, especially to those involved in sectors affecting our air, water, and soil resources, such as the industrial, agricultural, forestry, biodiversity, disaster risk reduction, and energy sectors. We are encouraging participation on the Twitter platform, Econatics, which focuses on environmental content related to Southern Africa and the continent. Visitors can raise opinions and offer comment, and in so doing we can all learn from each other. Those who are keen to gain a deeper understanding of environmental matters, can visit the free-for-all website, econatics.co.za. It is regularly updated with fresh and relevant information. Under current news, visitors can see what South Africa and other countries in Africa are doing, in their quest towards sustainability. The website serves as an extension of the textbook Environmental Management, a guide to sustainable living in Southern Africa. The book addresses the basic functioning of the environment from a sustainable point of view. It becomes clear to the reader that an integrated and holistic approach, from various disciplines, needs to be applied in order to avert the pending climate crisis. A sustainable ethic in South Africa is possible if we have informed lawyers who can effectively implement environmental legislation. If we have informed municipalities who can ensure sustainable infrastructure. And if we are informed residents who by virtue of our knowledge, are willing to adapt to a sustainable way of life. We cannot waste time. Action needs to be taken. The time is now.